In the 1970s, some of the greatest horror films were born. The Exorcist, Halloween, Black Christmas. But among these lists, there is one film that I think stands the test of time. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's also a franchise that still has entries spawning till this very day. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a franchise that I have a kinship to that is unlike any other horror franchise, including A Nightmare on Elm Street. The interesting thing about this franchise with me is that I've changed my mind on entries throughout the years more so than any other horror franchise. At this point in time, I feel settled and ready to make this list. I understand that there's a new film coming out next year, but why wait? I want you guys to see where I'm at with this franchise now, and we can update it later. So without further ado, here is my Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise ranking. I've been fairly harsh on Leatherface 2017 over the last few months to you guys. I'll be honest, I did revisit this film last night for the purpose of this video. I actually think that's a fairly well-made film. Even though it's still dead last, I still find some enjoyment from the film after a few years. I hate saying this because I always want to be as explanatory as possible, but it doesn't feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film to me. I wish I could truly put into words what I mean by that, but I think that some of you will understand what I mean, and it won't be good enough for others, and that's fine. But that's the only way I can put it. So I'll still watch this film a lot, but it's going to be dead last on this list. For now, anyway. Man, I really hate having Leatherface at number 7, but I guess I could explain more as you see the rest of the ranking. To be honest, I love this movie. I've garnered a lot of love for it over the last year or so. Even though Jeff Burr was handicapped throughout the entirety of the making of this film, I still think he got a lot of great stuff on screen. Leatherface stands the test of time if you ask me. The cast is impeccable, with great characters throughout and from every aspect of it. Ken Free is just one example of a great entry in this film. It is interesting to see that Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 probably has the most varied opinions of maybe any of the entries in the series. I like this film a lot. I see it as a mix between part 1 and 2 with its blend of darkness and humor. I also love seeing Carolyn Williams have a cameo in the opening of the film. And what an opening that Leatherface Part 3 has. I really love it. Texas Chainsaw 3D, baby. Now this one's just pure fun. I had to give this one an edge over Part 3 because this film's more recent, so I feel like the cards are more stacked against it. Nobody's expecting anything. Talk about a popcorn movie. I know a lot of people have problems with this film, claiming that there's timeline issues and whatnot. Look, Adam Marcus has gone on record saying he knew what year it was supposed to be, but the producers just figured let's make this film feel as modern as possible. This film features a really fun cast, and I have a great time watching them in the film. They know they're getting themselves into trouble, and we, the audience, really don't care. Let's see them get into trouble. Alexandria Daddario does a great job and balances the humor well in this film, and the Leatherface performance is fantastic. I eat up Texas Chainsaw 3D. Well, I guess here's my hot take for the video, and number 5 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. I love this film, don't get me wrong. I guess what it boils down to is this just isn't one that I connect with more so than a lot of the entries in this series. There's things I think are fantastic about it. Andrew Briniarski as Leatherface is undeniable. One of the best performances in the series, hands down. He does a great job, and he definitely qualifies as being Leatherface. Another thing that's great is the cast. God knows we all love that Jessica Biel in this movie, but they did replicate the 70s very well, and I give them a lot of credit. And R. Lee Ermey steals the show. This man was born to be in this franchise. Here comes the fireworks, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation. Now this is a film that I will stand by till this day. Not many films anymore can make me feel uncomfortable. And in 1994, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation would plant its seed to undoubtedly become a cult film that over the years would garner a bigger fan base. Matthew McConaughey gives one of the most startling, insane, uncomfortable, uneasy, bizarre, distraught, disgusting, you name it, performances I've ever seen. He truly makes me uncomfortable in this film. I can't trust him. There's a lot of criticism for this film, and I'm not here to necessarily argue much of it, but just state my case. Only a few of these films can make me feel grossed out. When you watch this film, the house, the wallpaper, the mess, the chairs, they're all so disgusting. I couldn't fathom to sit in this house with these people. Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation is undoubtedly the most bizarre entry of them all, and I love it for that. We need more films that do crazy things like this, in my opinion. And what about that ending? The Illuminati? What the hell is going on? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre family works for the government? What an ending it is. I just love it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning is a film that I love so dearly in this franchise. Be it a good theater experience and good memories, this was one I always loved from the beginning, no pun intended, and I always preferred it over the 2003 remake. I think I just like the story and the look of the film a lot more. There's a little bit of an oranger, brighter tone to it that I really appreciate, and I just like the house and family dynamics in this one the most. One thing that I always love too is in the beginning you see that it's two brothers on their way to fight in the war, but one of them doesn't want to do it, and the other one wants to do it to be there with his brother. Be it that I'm a younger brother, I always related to that story, and that's probably one big reason why I like it over the remake as well. The origin telling of the story is very simple, and that's one reason I love it too. We all want to see that big monster holding that chainsaw in this film, and they give it to us. Texas Chainsaw Massacre: at the Beginning is great, and I'll always be a big fan of it, and it has a special place in my heart. There's absolutely no hesitation or question that the second best in this franchise to me is Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Now, I could be here all day telling you about the things I love with this movie, but I'll say this. When it comes to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, one of the things that I need is great characters, and boy does Part 2 deliver. It also has some of the funniest scenes in franchise history. Dennis Hopper buying the chainsaws from the chainsaw store is probably one of the most hysterical things you'll ever see in 80s horror. It can't be topped. The suspense in this movie is great, too. The whole radio station sequence is just edge-of-your-seat stuff. I can't get enough of it. I also think that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 has probably one of the best openings in a horror movie, period, especially the 1980s. There's more things to talk about, but I'll leave it off here with probably one of the greatest supporting characters in a horror film ever. Bill Moseley as Chop Top. He absolutely steals and commands his scene. This film is a masterpiece, man, I tell ya. There's only one number one that could ever be number one in my opinion, and that is the original The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've been on record saying that I think it's the greatest horror film ever made, and I still stand by that to this day. The first time I ever saw this film, when I saw the table and I see this image now, I'm still shocked. Look at everything. Look at the skeleton lamp in the back. Look at the face lampshade above the table. Now, the original Texas Chainsaw isn't number one for some legacy reason. I still think it's one of the scariest films. When you watch this film in the right setting, it will still get to you and make you uneasy. And I stand by that. I guess if I were to talk about any particular thing in this movie that would make it number one, the opening alone is one of the most disturbing, scary, and nerve-wracking intros I've ever seen in a horror film. And it gets me still in 2021. I'll never forget being a young kid watching this movie and seeing the corpse on top of the tombstone as the camera starts panning in. I would back up into the couch further and further, knowing that this film is not my friend at all. This film has one agenda: to terrify me. And the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre will still do that for generations to come and be one of the scariest and greatest horror films ever made. Well, there it is, guys, my ranking of the Texas Chainsaw films as of right now. What I love about this franchise is kind of why I love the Elm Street franchise. Each entry kind of has its own particular feel and vibe. So it's a franchise that's always fun to binge through because you're never getting the same thing twice, so to speak. I really wonder if Tobe Hooper would have ever guessed that a character he created in a 1974 low-budget film would continue on through generation and generation, where studios pump thousands and millions of dollars into creating new characters and movies. One man started a franchise with nothing that is still running strong. Rest in peace to the great Tobe Hooper. We love and miss you.